The fridge hums low, the lights flicker bright. Microwave's got a mind tonight. The thermostat whispers in the dark. Charging port spark like a steel heart. The toaster's on, the kettle screams. The coffee maker's brewing skin. Maximum overdrive. They've come alive. Wires twist, machines won't thrive.
Hit the like, everybody.
We won't survive. It's the rise of the high. Maximum overdrive. Vacuum's got vengeance in its roar. TV's no longer for keeping score. The washing machine's in a spin of rage. Blender sharp teeth escape the cage. The oven plots, the curtain shake. Every gadget wide awake. Maximum overdrive. They've come alive.
All right, we're about to get started. Share the show, everybody. Give us a thumbs up, even if you're afraid of what I'm going to talk about, which you probably are.
I'm afraid.
You should be. All right, hold on. I'm going to jump straight in. Let's just get started right away. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Friday Eye. My dear friend Rob Glenn is joining me today, and I got to tell you, I'm full of piss and vinegar about the topic today. I made a mistake. I did it again. I started watching the doomer reaction to the AI stuff, and it's just as dumb as the utopian reaction, you know, and if not more so, because I could see them benefiting financially from it. And there was this, I think it's Tim Dillon, just did a video where he's like,
I don't see anything on my screen.
Sorry, one second.
But I just noticed that I'm on.
You are on screen. Yes, you are. There you are.
I'm glad I didn't say something mean about you.
Yeah, exactly. And you totally can. I can withstand it. I'm not as emotionally delicate apparently as our AI overlords. Okay.
Hi everybody. Sorry.
Hi. Yes. So Tim Dillon, for those that don't know, is one of the recent converts back to reality about in terms of his support of Donald Trump, and he's one of these guys who helped get him elected, and now is sort of realizing the damage he has done. Okay, pretty much. And he's a comedian. He's
12 to 18 months.
He's a big chubby dude. He's I didn't know this. I was today old when I found out he was gay, because he brings it up at one point because he's worried that Sam Altman and Peter Thiel and the other kind of gay tech bros are giving gay people a bad name. So that's one of his concerns, right? But then I guess I got to tell you, I don't really ever find those reactions like, oh, those people are giving me a bad name, because I don't identify with a cultural group, even when I'm a part of that cultural group, because my individuality supersedes that, and that's what I assume about other people. So I don't even think a bad person from one group can make the other group look bad, because it doesn't in my mentality. Doesn't make any sense to me. Jeffrey Epstein doesn't make Jews look bad. Donald Trump doesn't make, I guess, Scotch German descendants look bad. Like, it's silly, right? I don't think anybody's an indicator of a particular group, but it does show that when people are worried about that's how they think, and it might actually explain their ideas. Now, I'm going to show you our dear friend Rob Glenn a little bit of this panic attack, and you'll recognize it from the stuff that we've seen.
Giving workers plenty of time to adjust.
This is
Maybe
Tim
white collar
Dillon
types have 12
talking.
to 18 months left. Maybe the
Why do I
AI-related
not hear
job
it? Hold on
carnage
a
will be
second.
contained.
You guys hear that? Why do I not hear?
I can hear it.
You hear it?
I'm coming in. By the way, just so everybody knows, I'm coming in 100% cold to all of this.
Yeah, well, that's. I mean, you'll be able to handle it though. I'm not.
Yeah.
Worried about that in particular. Am I
to a sliver of the economy.
Yeah, it's weird. It's just not going out. Do I have like I think Chrome turned off in my monitor on this one because of feedback on some other things? Maybe not. Oh, maybe it's. I got what it is. Hold on. Safari. Where'd you go?
John, big man, I'm not tired. Maybe it's my beard. It makes me look tired. I need to shave it off. So
Always
I
the
look
problem, right? Yeah. Hold on. Why is that on mute when capturing? That's odd. Okay. So, see if I can hear this.
Maybe we should be more worried about a stock market
Nope,
bubble.
you guys can hear it, but I can't. That's so odd. What's going on? Let's see. Yeah. Well, I know what it is. I got it figured out. Hold on. There is always a weird thing with. There we go. B Studio. Go to monitor. Hopefully that will shift things. All this audio routing I have going on is always an issue. Okay, now I can hear it. Okay, good. So this is. Let's back up a quick second. This is Tim Dillon's brilliant take on the current state of AI, etc. Right? Okay, let's just do this. Hold on one second. I gotta do this. Allow. Let me go back to full screen. There we go, so we can show this.
Maybe algorithm-driven changes will happen slowly, giving workers plenty of time to adjust. Maybe white-collar types have 12 to 18 months left. Maybe the AI-related job carnage will be contained to a sliver of the economy. Maybe we should be more worried about a stock market bubble than an AI-driven labor revolution. I don't think anyone knows what will happen or even what is happening now. AI technology is changing at an exponential pace and changing the workforce in 1,000 hard-to-parse ways. And the people that are making the AI, the people that are...
This is the part where it gets really good. That we've heard this argument so far, like nobody knows, and it might get, it could go north or south.
Are really enthused about this stuff, are very happy to see the entire world destroyed. I mean, it's true. It's one of the only products that I've ever seen a mass marketing campaign for that they will tell you, the people that are making the product will tell you they're going to destroy the world. And they say it very calmly, and they're like, Sam Altman's like, well, I think that we should all keep in mind that before the complete and total destruction of the world, we're going to have a real increase in productivity. I've never seen a product like this.
I've also never seen anybody actually say it like that. I mean, if you're going to paraphrase to ad absurdum or ad infinitum, at least quote them first and then parse their words in your own way and give your own veneer on it because you think they're lying. At no point, by the way, I've checked, has Sam Altman said we'll have a great spike in productivity before we end the world, like in any way or other. Like a lot of them are just worried about a 10% chance that this could fuck up the world in ways that they can't see. Which, by the way,
Right.
and his other point about I've never seen a product advertised like this. Well, first of all, it's probably with more honesty than other products in terms of that. Because when fast
could
food
argue that.
showed up on the scene, did they have an argument about what it would do? It was probably like, we can get food into people's bellies much faster and cheaper than anybody in the world, which sounds great until, you're a rise in cancer or obesity or those kind of things, the secondary effects that you didn't factor in that may very well have driven lifespans down. Nuclear power, and nuclear weapons specifically, while they were developing it, it was a product within governments, but it wasn't a product for the public. So they never addressed it as like, well, it could destroy the world, but that's kind of the fucking point. So if they try to destroy our world, we'll destroy theirs. So it's the only time it's been a product you've actually had a say in, which I think speaks more to the democratization of its use than it does
like
about
the
the product.
CERN particle collider was supposed to create a black hole in the underground
Right.
and suck the entire Earth into it. So
Right, and
there's
we didn't, and none
and
of
they
us had a
still did
vote.
that.
Right, yeah, they still did it, and it still could, I guess, at any second if they fuck up. But the point is,
Maybe, I don't know.
they didn't sell the product of CERN to us at all because we don't participate in it as consumers. We might benefit from the science that comes from it, or benefit from the science, the circumstances that are avoided by the science that comes from it. Meaning, if they can stop awful as well as start cool stuff, that's usually the inventor, the inventor's process, the two main roads. But anyways, let me finish a little bit more of this, and we'll get into.
This would have been like if McDonald's in the 90s was like, we're giving you cancer. You're all getting cancer. No one, you got to bury the lead a little bit here. Get up Sam Altman talking about AI and the complete destruction of the labor force. They will straight up tell you, and props to them. They're not hiding it. They're going, yeah, I mean, there's no way around it. There's no way around it. Everyone that has a job and a purpose right now and money has to figure out some other way to live. We got to figure out another way for them to live. It's just whatever your life is where you.
By the way, I would like to say that this panic that you're seeing in a bunch of these folks is largely because automation and other things are no longer confined to blue-collar written-off jobs. That part of the reason why this asshole and other people like him are worried about it being put out of a job by AI is because automation's been doing this kind of shit, by the way, for millennia. If you had to hand whittle every fucking Model T, if everybody had to hammer the steel out themselves with a hammer, it would take thousands of people. But the fact that we had a factory floor limited the number of people involved, and then over time, automation has limited those people. He just didn't give a fuck about those people that have been replaced by automation so far, because he won't participate in that. He's not part of that economy and never intended to be. But now that it's moving up into the area where he can see some level of participation either in his family or himself, that's when it gets worrisome. And in reality, it's shifted, what it's meant to be physical labor over time, but it hasn't made it. By and large, we've done a lot of outsourcing. You and I've talked about this, where even with the level of automation that has put American workers out of work, the expense of that is higher than just putting the factory in China and letting a bunch of idle Chinese people do it. Still, now at a certain point, that won't be true anymore, and it won't end the jobs that ended in the United States when we automated or outsourced. It'll end those outsourced jobs. So one more second of this, and then we'll get.
You have a job and you have money from that job. That's not going to work anymore. That's not going to work anymore. So if you need stuff like that to, and they'll even say stuff like this. They'll be like, if you need a job and money to feel good about yourself, we got a real problem. We got a real problem coming if you need a job and money to feel good about yourself, because that's not part of the future. We're all going to be, yeah. So here's Sam Altman, who's defending.
All right. So he pulls up a clip eventually, Rob, where he says, it takes so much to train these models. They're so expensive. And then he plays this Sam Altman thing. Well, training a person's expensive. It's, years of time and food and all the stuff that you have to grow a genius. There's that you can't write that part of it off. So it's not like real geniuses.
Genius.
Yeah, real genius doesn't take a lot of energy too, right? Is his argument. Obviously,
Did Sam Altman say that?
Yeah, I said ballpark. Yes, he plays he plays a clip of it. Hold on, let me see if I.
Guys,
I'll see if he
like,
brings it up.
A good
1 second.
side of beef costs money to grow too, right?
Yeah, exactly. But and all these. So, is this?
about
Well,
how much
I
energy.
trust
The
you.
things that is always unfair in this comparison is people talk about how much energy it takes to train an AI model relative to how much it costs a human to do one inference query. But it also takes a lot of energy to train a human. It takes like 20 years of life and all of the food you eat during that time before you get smart. And not only that, it took like the very widespread evolution of the 100 billion people that have ever lived and learned not to get eaten by predators and learned how to like figure out science and whatever to produce you. And then you took whatever you.
So here's what's going on. I don't want to scare anyone. These people.
Okay, this is the final thing. Okay, as dumb as
Well,
it's
I'm
been,
scared.
yes, as dumb as it's been so far, Rob Glenn. Just what, like, you're everybody who is even, remotely sympathetic to how I feel about this stuff, or Rob and I in the discussions that we've had over time about the realities of this and not the kind of, ad absurdum insanity and like both utopian and dystopian that have been thrown around. You're going to get a touch of how I feel when I watch Ex Machina when you hear what Tim Dillon says next. Because we go from these tech assholes don't care who they put out of a job. They just want to replace workers with cheaper labor or whatever, which is an argument that's been around since anybody's ever had a business, or a job to do. And they want fewer people to have to do it because getting all those people on board to do it, even if it's a group, a tribe, is hard. Here you go.
All believe that they are communicating with some ancient Sumerian deity. I know this I have kind of sources on this. They believe they really do. They believe they are communicating with super intelligence, and they do believe, and he just said it out loud, by the way. He literally just said, he was like, the 100 million years of evolution, all of the 20 years of life, they have all led to this point. And this point is when we are going to give birth, as I've said on the show before, because this is their main goal, to the AI demon. They want to give birth to the AI demon, the super intelligent AI, who is then going to run the planet and decide who stays, who goes, who's necessary, who's not. They're pretty open about this. This is the thing about...
Pretty open. I got to say, it's doing a lot of heavy lifting here because, it requires a lot of insane inference. But this is not, Rob Glenn, this is not an uncommon sort of...
No, I know.
Theological response to this fucking madness around, and I really do think this points to sort of what I would call like the ignorance matrix, that the more ignorant people are about something, the more they attribute sort of superstitious factors to it.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk to a chatbot, it's like when Google came into existence. Like,
right,
you have access to like a level of expertise or a level of like communication that wasn't before possible.
Right.
So it could, you could see how it could feel very spiritual to somebody.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it helps if they're dumb, but also I do think that it's this. I don't
know that it's. I don't know. I mean, yes, dumb people can end up in dumb places, but also there's a whole lot of people that have been developing AI that like basically go off and turn super spiritual and like go start farming or something, because they also somehow have a break and feel
I think
like they're destroying the world.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between a belief that you've created runaway technology and you'd rather go hide someplace like Professor Falcon in War Games, which is exactly what we're talking about in that regard. Like, and talking to a chatbot and going, this feels oddly personal, to Sam Altman and the guys at Anthropic and the guys at Perplexity and the programmers that are there are summoning forth the Sumerian god for the end times, because that's what they viewed as their value, like the natural.
Well, they're like, in almost all these cases, I feel like people are reacting to a very acute reality that points to actual human existence, like human behavior. And
Yeah.
if you really think about human behavior over time, it does become like the Fifth Element kind of video montage, right? Like,
Mhm.
because human beings they can be awful and they can be great. And, you know,
Yeah.
like, you're like, shit, like my neighbor fucking sucks.
Yeah,
Right?
right.
Like I can't even go outside because they might shoot me, right? Like,
Right.
and so when you're like, I don't know, like
But the
presented
line
with
between that
all
and
these
nuke the block
possibilities,
is
what's
is
that?
the line between my neighbor sucks and nuke the block to solve the problem is such a like a giant psychotic leap.
Well,
Um,
no, I think the leap. I mean, I'm not arguing with you. I'm just
yeah.
sort of like trying to talk through the like why, because like it's very easy to get to where they are because the problem or the like when a problem gets so big, people give up. But when the possibilities are so massive, people give up in the opposite direction. Like
Right.
they they feel as if that it's impossible to like harness such a great capability.
Right. I
And
agree.
so that's sort of the non-starter.
Yeah.
And then if you combine that with humans suck, the only possibility for this great power is that some awful person is going to go destroy the world. Like
R-
because they can't conceive of the opposite of that, which is some great person will turn it into Star Trek future.
Yeah.
And both are false. Like
Yeah.
because the answer ends up being this muddy middle where you just sludge through it, and in 5 years AI will be no different than Google Docs or Word, and we'll be like, yeah, that was fucking stupid that we thought that Terminator was here because this thing's not even that great. Like,
Yeah, right. Or it does what we need it to do and no more. Here, I do think that there is an order of magnitude difference between we have created this wind up toy, and if it winds up and walks in the wrong direction, it will knock over a bottle of alcohol near a candle and burn the house down. There's a difference between that and these guys are sitting around a table with magic hats on, summoning forth in their mind or in their belief system or mechanically or technologically a wind up demon specifically for the purpose of burning the house down. And I think that's where the leap annoys me. It's not that
yeah.
I'm surprised that some people will come to conclusions like this. It's just how permeate it is on a section of the right wing. I think like there's an anti-technology bent on the on our side of the aisle, on the left side of the aisle, I guess, that just doesn't want to displace workers and put people out of job and is worried about unemployment and feeding people and maybe technologically
Privacy.
yeah, privacy, sure. Although I think the right's very concerned about privacy as well because they have more to hide. But that's another thing. And they
Well,
don't.
I think it's we're like talking about almost all the things we're talking about here are in the middle of the horseshoe.
Yes,
Like so they can you can come at it from either direction
true,
and
true.
and
But
find yourself in the sweet spot.
I think our concerns are a mix of material concerns. Where's the power going to come from? What's the climate impact on this? Will it be materially biased and harm people because it's been trained like Grok to be racist or something like that? And if it's set up to control Social Security, that will impact real human lives. Those kind of concerns are the kind you can focus on, regulate, mitigate, work on, but they are an order of magnitude away from the AI companies are intentionally bringing about the rise of ball, right? And you're like, fuck, where do I even start with these assholes? And if that's what they harbor underneath, every criticism that they have has to be weighed based on, wait a minute, do you just hate this because you think there's a demon inside it? Or are we really having a conversation about how to regulate this so that we don't turn Social Security over to Grok because no one would be that fucking stupid?
Yeah. Turning Social Security to Grok is more a grift or like
Yeah.
corruption
It's a material thing.
Like Grok could, if Grok was not tuned the way that X tunes it, it would probably do just fine doing Social Security. But they tune it to be what it is for whatever purposes they want it, or for whatever like slant they want it to have, I guess. But in many cases, it does give answers that are accurate and like legitimate if you ask it not to slant that direction, right?
Right.
So, but I mean, to me, like this kind of just goes back to, I keep saying that this is amplifying the problems that already exist. And so again, like, I mean, you're onto something in the sense that, like, I think a lot of people, the if you want to call it the doomer hype, as I think you meant, as you're sort of calling it at the beginning of this, you hear it like it's very vocal right now because, as you said, it has the like vision or the very capability of taking away the livelihood of the person who's talking. And this is one of the first things that like really is driving into that, what maybe you call white collar work, that like knowledge work or performance or art, in the sense of like the creation of visuals and things like that. So and I do believe you're right that if you were a blue collar worker working in an auto factory in 1970 and they brought in a robot in 1980, like you're probably going to feel the same way as these people do, and say similar things to these people are saying now, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so
you could
so I
trace
think,
Terminator to that as much as you
Exactly.
could trace it to some sort of abstract concept of AI that was had in the early 80s. That what if a robot just got up off the assembly line and decided to start killing people, and it's bulletproof, made out of metal, and doesn't stop because that's what automated assembly line robots do.
In fact, they kill the first Terminator inside of a factory.
Right. It's hoisted by its own petard at that point. So that it's a direct corollary to where the fear came from. In the same way that, like, you know, zombies used to be about communism, and then they were later based on like rioting poor people with AIDS, which is what the 28 Days Later zombies were based on. This fear of like bloodborne illness and LA riots mixed together gave you the 28 Days Later zombie. The original was it eats your brains and turns you into a mindless consuming worker, which is what communism was. You know, that was the fearscape on that. It was earlier done in Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Take all your emotion and originality away and make you just basically be a plant. It turns you into a potted plant, right? It's the same thing.
Right.
The allegory for Terminator didn't come from like some Asimov idea of an out-of-control AI or Douglas Adams' view of deep thought. It came from, we're automating everything away, so eventually we'll automate soldiers, and what if one of them keeps, you know, making the widget over and over again, regardless of whether we want it to stop.
And they called it the machines were taking over.
Yes, right.
They thought, or it was considered like a mechanical takeover at that point. Like then the mechanical was controlled by this computer that was all knowing, right? Or whatever. So at any rate, so the problem. So what are the problems like that already exist that are sort of being brought up? One of my an old like boss of mine used to say that when he worked in manufacturing, would say that one way to find out where the problems were would be to get rid of. You go into the plant and you basically say no more overtime, and when you say no more overtime, you essentially wait for things to break.
Yeah.
And then when those things break, because what's happening is like these inefficiencies are being cleaned up by just brute forcing, doing more work. And so then as the things break, you go and you fix the things that are broken or that are breaking in front of you, right? And so similar thing is happening here where like a technology is like applied to a situation. And I think it's a little different in that it shows a vision of these possibilities, and that vision is instructed by the current way we think about companies and work and CEOs and things like that. So so I'm going to try to get to this point, where it is that he was saying, and that is when you think of Sam Altman as a CEO, And by the way, he's a terrible fucking spokesperson.
Yeah.
These tech guys, like, they think they can get up into these symposiums and sit there and talk. They need to shut their fucking mouths and find somebody that's like a decent marketer,
Right.
or like a personality, and like have a spokesperson, for God's sakes.
Right.
So that's the first problem. The second one is it's because companies, and we've like sort of, we have a couple of things. Like, first of all, it's all profit driven, right?
Right.
The market, like, all we talk about is the market and how what are the expectations, and how are they performing based on the expectations, and yada yada yada. And then in terms of like new stuff, it's all about like entrepreneurship is about hitting the lottery, essentially. Like, you're gonna go on Shark Tank and get the $1 million investment, or if you're a startup, you want to go to a VC or a angel investor, and you're wanting to win the investment, right?
Yes.
And then you like build your company with this money, and then there's expectations because of that money, and so on and so forth. So inside of these structures, it's sort of like been known that, well, you make a thing and you try to like do it as cheap as possible, and you sell it for as much as possible. And there's a very well-known thing that the most expensive thing in that process is always labor.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that a lot because everybody talks about labor and jobs and shipping them overseas, and how our products are cheaper because the labor is cheaper. So we have these sort of mechanisms in our head really well. And now it's like, oh, now there's a white collar version of a robot. It's obvious what Sam Altman, or what's the Twitter guy, the block guy, what's his name?
Jack Dorsey.
Jack Dorsey. So it's obvious Jack Dorsey, the way he's going to become more profitable is get rid of people because they're the most expensive, and exchange them with AI.
Right.
And so that story makes a lot of sense. And this is a really long way of me saying that, like, Jack Dorsey needed to fire half of his employees before AI because his company fucking sucks.
Because it was bloated and and redundant.
Yeah, it's bloated and it's expensive, and he's probably not making enough money, and none of these guys are making any money.
Right.
When you look at like the valuations and stuff, they don't make any sense. So many of these software companies are actually about like what the possibility of what they will make. I'm going to invest on this possibility of what it's going to be in 5 years. And in actuality, they're not actually making any money. OpenAI is not really making much money compared to what their valuation is.
Well, yeah.
So at any rate, the story makes sense if you think about it from the standpoint of like our goal is all these things. But if you think about it from the standpoint of our goal is to live and to make a living and to live in a house and to have a family, then you can come at it completely different and say that AI could supercharge everybody just living.
Yes.
But that living is living like a normal, average, maybe middle to upper middle class style lifestyle now, as opposed to a few of us are going to win the lottery and be millionaires, and the rest of us are just out of luck, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, I also think some of them are planning on that or hoping for it, that they can get a toehold before the equalizing factors happen.
Because that's what the game is supposedly about, right? The game in this case, the game is there's only so many video cards. There's only so many NVIDIA chips. So the only way to win the game is you've got to secure the chips. That's effectively the problem right now. And that's why all these buildups are happening, and people are basically like exchanging fake money. They're saying, well, I'm going to commit to this many trillion.
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm going to commit to this many more trillion, right? So like,
especially over a long time frame when the growth in the capability is so exponential that you and I both argued that a lot of these factories, these AI factories, these data centers that they're going to break ground on in 2 years will be obsolete in their current form by that time, at least by design.
In fact, NVIDIA already, quote unquote, canceled the deal that they had with OpenAI, which never was a deal to begin with. So like, it was so fucking stupid because the announcement of the deal was something that sort of created this fake value in both of their stocks, I suppose. And then the cancellation of the deal then changed the playing field again. And in actuality, nothing happened.
Right.
They just said two things.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
all
and
it
also,
was.
yes. And also, it can create a self fulfilling kind of cycle of growth v savings in the short term because none of them know how much they'll need to keep up with whoever else is out there. So there's, on the one hand, the DeepSeek moment that freaked everybody else out was that maybe it doesn't take all this energy and all this space to build this kind of thing. And in this, in relation to what Sam Altman said about growing a human being, effectively that's what happened with DeepSeek, is that they built DeepSeek on top of OpenAI's ChatGPT, and without all the investment in ChatGPT, you don't have it. In the same way that there's no SpaceX without NASA doing all the heavy lifting for decades so that they could kind of swoop in, use the calculations, and start forming stuff, because fabbing these materials is much easier now than it was in 1975.
Right. Yeah. And then on top of all of this, nobody's being honest about what these things are, because they want to create value that doesn't exist. So they're all effectively selling something bigger than what it is,
Right.
in my opinion. And so yeah, it does a lot of things. But if you slap AI onto anything, then what people assume is like the greatest potential for that thing is about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's as untrue as it possibly could be. Like AI in a drone in Ukraine is not autonomous.
Right.
Like it's literally just an image recognition machine, and it hopes that the thing that it sees fits into the window of what it recognizes. And if
Right.
it doesn't, it's going to go to that thing and blow it up. And it doesn't know any different. It doesn't know if it's a person or a tank or a school. Right. It's just whatever the image recognition thing is. So the once you attach AI to everything,
Mm-hmm.
AI to a lawyer, to an accountant, to a farmer, then it's like, well, at this point, your mind doesn't go to what's possible. It goes to what I think could happen if Terminator came, or if like science fiction were true, this movie that somebody came up with 5 or 10 years ago, right? Instead of the reality of it, which is like, yeah, it's a thing and it works really well, but it doesn't do everything. And
right.
There's
and
limits
it won't.
to these.
And it
won't.
a lot of the, I will also say that there is an issue with kind of the on the spectrum way that that Google worked for a long time in terms of search engine, and giving you more of what you're looking for, almost as if you have a pathological need for a regular order all the time. That's directly reflective of sort of the neurodivergent crowd that gets into coding, that designed the thing in the first place, that they don't understand how most of society works. And it's so funny how many of the jobs they talk about replacing are the elimination of having to deal with other people, because the people that we're talking about that run these companies have a difficult time dealing with other human beings. Like, so they're solving for their problem, not for the problem of the public. And that's why it kind of comes with this idea that they're going to, that they want to end humanity or something like that, because they talk in terms of like not needing to deal with people as much as possible, because that's their burden and it's not necessarily everybody else's. It's not like they're doing this like, you'd have more time to go to barbecues. Like that's the way most people think of productivity, or like longer weekends, 4-day work week. Maybe I can get all my work done in half a day and then spend the rest of the day with my kids, or I can work from home, and those kind of things. Productivity in those terms is thought about in what it buys you in terms of other time. But with the guys like Sam Altman and others, they just like more time to hide in my bunker away from people and not have to talk to people because they're gooey and messy and confusing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a like an approach to put over it as one thing. I mean, there is an interesting thing about just organization. Like, so work like the when you say like it's going to take jobs, then you have
Mhm.
to like then think about what is work, like what are the jobs, and what is the purpose of those people there, right? And
Yeah.
in almost all cases, the things that it's talking about, like the development of software, maybe like internal teams, presentations, like data analysis, things like that.
Sure.
Almost all of them are about effectively communicating with the rest of the team. Like it's basically getting everybody on the same page. It's like
Mhm.
a management thing. Because if it takes 100 software developers to make a piece of software, if you don't manage those 100 people and get them all going in the same direction, the software is not going to work. And even the best organizations in the world can't get they struggle to get 100 people to do the same thing, or to do their different tasks in a way that comes together coherently, right?
Right.
So what AI, in the case, like what you're seeing in the case of like the Claude bot and the Codex and the thing, like right now you're hearing a lot of people say agents, and they're talking about it in the context of themselves being a developer. Almost
Mhm.
everybody online talking about agents seems to be a software developer of some kind.
Right.
And those agents are effectively like eliminating the need for the team,
Mhm.
right? And the way you get the agents to work is you manage them like a manager or a project manager, or like a designer or something like that,
Mhm.
right? And so what AI is doing for them, or what they see it does for them, it basically like
I think it eliminates the
takes
need for
away all the
VC
difficulty
for
of
a lot of them.
communicating. What's
It
that?
it eliminates the need for VC for them. When you talk about the jobs that are going away
Well,
in that
for sure
regard,
that.
is that venture capitalists, people who invest in, shotgun approach, throw $5,000 into small companies that are just starting out all over the place to own a giant part of the upside later. Um, those guys are increasingly unnecessary. You can get way further along to even the point of iteration and sales without, especially in software, without any of
Software
those
is good.
guys. The PayPal
Absolutely.
mafia would not exist if these AI tools had existed earlier and somebody had built PayPal off of that. And the next PayPal will, by and large, be built by somebody that creates a better mousetrap of this shit, using
Yeah, I
AI and a
think that
smaller team of people, and no
yeah,
owing money to Peter Thiel.
yeah, I mean, effectively, like some really smart developers are currently looking for all those places. Like
Yeah.
the transaction fee for Visa and MasterCard, fucking ridiculous.
Yes.
Like the fact that it costs money to ACH for an individual, like a transfer of money from one bank account to the other, fucking ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
why does any of that happen?
That's not a
Right.
real thing. Nobody,
Right.
there's no
And
physical labor anywhere in it. If you're paying
exactly.
for the security of it, you should be paying a fee for the security of it overall, not by transaction. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's just one example, but there's all kinds of things where there's like these things in between something that shouldn't be like it is. But the reason they're there is because previous to the technology that makes it easy, it was actually hard. So we're
Yeah.
still carrying the load of the time before, when it was a hard thing, right? And so the point I'm trying to make is they're looking for those places where they could create a thing which um, eliminates the need for those middle expenses, we'll call them.
Hmm.
And so when that starts to happen, the the thing that keeps those middle expenses around is just pure, it's just scale. That's all it
Yeah.
is. And
So
it's how many people have it on their phones, how many stores have that screen for the credit card to buzz, right? And so I think what's going to happen is you're going to see small versions of these things pop up, and they're going to sort of like grow from underneath and
yeah.
just erode those things, because instead of what these guys are thinking, which there's going to be a lightning strike and they're all going to blow up and then nothing is going to be left, what's
Right.
really going to happen is these new things are going to kind of grow in the cracks and
Hmm.
eventually expand the cracks until Visa goes away or it becomes a different thing in a
Yeah.
different form.
Yeah, so a couple of questions showed up in the chat room. Snitch Malu says, where was it? It's called, is anyone working on improving AI efficiency to use less power? I would argue
It's happening absolutely
all
right now.
of them are, because that's
All of
one
them.
of the parts of the race, right? Is that if you can build your data center and it doesn't require you to invest $1 billion into a nuclear plant next to it, you're better off, right? You'll move faster and cheaper than everybody else. So they're all operating on that. The other one was,
Well, can you pause for a second on that?
yeah.
Can I say something? So the news you hear about the upcoming expenditure of resources is the future. The current, the present, everything's accounted for. Meaning all the chips that can be plugged in and working are pretty much all plugged in and working. And the only thing keeping them from growing is that in Taiwan they can't make any more than they are now.
Yeah, they're
So
making them
there's
as
a
fast as
limit.
they can. They're
Yeah,
and they're almost at an iteration crash, which is the orders on the chips that are here, that are coming out, are in the time that they're able to fulfill those orders, like in manufacturing, a new design is going to overtake those. Where you're almost in the M2, M4, M5 Mac situation, where if you're just about to the consumer point of ready to buy an M4 Mac, the M5 is coming out and it's a couple months away, largely because of manufacturing, and you can't swap it out later. And so you're asking for a commitment to yesterday's technology for a lot of these folks. So they're buying into chips that aren't even out yet, with the presumptive nature of calculations they'll be able to make if and when they ever get the next iteration that will be almost obsolete by the time it arrives.
right. So my point there is to say that the news, if you're asking that question and you're feeling like, oh my God, this is a runaway train and there's no stopping it, it's not a runaway train. What will stop it is the inability to make the stuff to suck the power, right? And there's you can't even build these new factories that fast.
Right.
They say a memory factory takes 4 years to come online, I think, if I'm quoting that correctly. So it's looking like you're looking forward because the news seems like it's inevitable, but the reality on the ground right now is they're effectively at capacity because there's no more stuff. There's no more capacity. So if you're any one of these developers trying to create something, you have no choice but to do more with the same amount.
Yes.
And that's how technology works.
Yep.
And if you can say, I can do double the calculations for the same amount of power, you might win, right?
That's enough. That's better than an iteration of a new model, because
Exactly.
if your model can, you actually can, it's a better sales factor, both in token usage, energy costs, investment, how much money you can make in the back end. Is that if you can up your model from a 5.2 to a 5.5 or whatever, that's great. But if 5.2 can cost a half or a third of the energy that it used, that puts you in the pocket of a lot of other people. That moves you closer to, broader availability, quicker returns on your investment that you already have, that you've already instituted. Right.
And everything over time has worked that way. It's a combination of volume, we need to make more, and efficiency, we need to do more with what we already have.
Yes.
And I would argue that there is no possible way for the pace to happen the way that the hype is saying it will.
Right.
It's I don't even think the deals they're announcing are even physically possible.
I agree. I think they're fucking cartoonish, in the same way that there's some sort of Japanese investment fund that they're just going to dump on us. Right. It's silly.
There's no factory to make the thing that you're investing in.
Right.
They don't exist, and it's going to take years to do it. So
and everybody around you, all your competitors are trying to figure a way to shrink this thing down and make it fit inside of a laptop that 100 billion, again, the Glenn law, we should just call it at some point, the Rob Glenn law, that, it's already enough, if not more than enough, for 99% of the use cases that people will have. In the same way that most people don't need a physics calculator, a regular calculator is plenty, right? You don't need one that helps you do trigonometry that has all the little squiggles and shapes and all that stuff in it. 99% of people don't need more than that calculator, and they can do an enormous amount with it, right? Before they ever, if ever they need to graduate upward. And this is true of these models as well. Doc Spano has something I want to move into in our second hour together, the practical use aspect of it, because you and I can it's very easy to get caught up into the theoretical, because that's the theoretical, I think, is where most of the pushback is necessary in terms of talking about this topic, because it's where the most, because like you said, Sam Altman doesn't know how to talk to people, and the doomers are thinking that their way of explaining the damage that AI could do on a material level is that they're trying to summon a Sumerian demon, like Tim Dillon says. Like, it's so fucking dumb on the bookends that it's hard, a lot of times you feel like I'm putting out fires before we ever get to what can this actually do, and what can it actually do for me? What are the benefits, and what are the real dangers that are possible from it? And one of these sprouted off of something that you've been working on.
So what was the second question, though? Was there a second question?
No, I think it was more of a remark about something. But this is
there was one from. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so this not sure best way to submit question to Rob. My question comment is that on his thought of creating the persistent memory soul file that ChatGPT will be able to know about me for the personalization to get better answers and more relevant discussions. I had a full conversation to get ChatGPT to build me a better file for that about me. How will that grow and become better over time? And what does it know about him? I think, or me, or your version of it. Now, you have been building a system.
This is exactly what I've been working on.
Yes, and it's very impressive. And I started working on my own kind of version of it as well. And both of us kind of came to, our own, conclusions around the same corners, I think. So explain to everybody, like, what you built and what it was based on, and then I'll kind of explain where I went with mine.
Yeah. Okay. So Doc Spano talks about able to know about him for the personalization to get better answers. So personalization would be like, it needs some information about me to like answer me with more relevant answers, right?
Yes.
And then he's getting into it. Is Doc Spano a man or a woman? Anyway, whatever. They are getting into it. I had a full conversation to get ChatGPT to build me a better file for that about me. And that's the key, is the file about you. Mm-hmm. And so what I realized about 3 months ago when I started building this is that, and I've been saying it on the show, is that in order to get good answers, you have to send a lot of information with every question, every single question. And when the memory in a chatbot is memory, it's because it's making that file for you. Mm-hmm. Okay. So like my ChatGPT remembers a lot about me because that's the only one I use. The reason it does is because it's been saving information about everything we've chatted about. And it's usually like a summary. Mm-hmm. They call it a markup or a markdown file.
Yeah, an MD
and it just
file.
looks like a bunch of text. There's like no code in it hardly. It's just like a big, huge chunk of text. Because that's how the LLM can talk, can read. It's very efficient at reading just straight text, right? Doesn't need any code or anything like that. So what I realized was that I wanted to own my text. Yeah. I wanted to control it. Number one, I wanted to control it. Number two, I wanted to own it. And then there's a third thing, and that is I wanted to be able to create context windows. And what I mean by that is, because when you start to think about privacy, so in my life, I'm a partner, I'm a dad, I work at a company, I work for clients, and I have a unique situation where the clients can't know each other because everybody's stuff is secret, right?
Right.
So I have to actually compartmentalize projects as well. Mm-hmm. And so what I started doing was I created...
By the way, just for everybody who's panicking right now on Tim Dillon's team, Rob does not work for the CIA. He just means that these companies have proprietary business stuff that's sort of the equivalent of the recipe for Coke that they just don't want to share. So
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah. No, it's like they're inventing, like we invent things. So
Yeah.
everybody's thing is their own invention that they're going to get a patent on or whatever.
That's
anyway, so I basically created what I would call I call it a to-do list, but it's really this like it basically just gets like hammered with my notes. Like I literally, if I have a thought, I text a note to it. If I have a particular thought about a project, I text that project, or I write it into that project. And then while I'm doing that, sometimes they become just, oh, I should go research that note. Other times it's like a record of something that I did. And other times it's like I write notes inside of it that say what I did, what the outcome was, and what I'm going to do next. And so what's happening inside of each one of those is I'm essentially just recording what I'm doing, like real time. I'm not thinking about like organizing it on the front end. And this is the most important part of what came out of this. I actually don't organize on the front end. I only organize on the back end. And that's a really important aspect of working, because I found that there were two things. One's called switching costs, where if we're jumping between major things, like I have to go pay a bill for my credit card personally, or I have to pay my power bill, and then I'm going to go jump and like design a gearbox for a product. Like that switch is like, there's a lot going on in that.
There's a time
switch.
expense. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
There's
and a lot of that time is just finding the website, finding the link, finding the folder, finding the password, like getting back into the information. So if I have just these chunks of things that are like all there, then I just go to the chunk and then I use AI to summarize like constantly. And so now effectively what I have is these massive markdown files that are organized in chunks based on the stuff that we're working on. And I'm on the fly creating the thing that Doc Spano is talking about.
Yeah.
And I do it by essentially just talking through what we are doing. And so now I own that because it's all on my local thing.
Yeah.
And I can choose if I include it in a chat or I don't include it in a chat. So that probably like got way too nerdy. I don't know if that made any sense.
Okay, yeah. Let me bring it down to like a functional use. So the idea is that instead of ChatGPT storing its own memory file, or Anthropic, if you use theirs, storing its own memory file, what you will do is you create a memory file and then you reference it within whatever model you are using. So there is a static amount of information that is about you that's proprietary, housed on your desktop or your computer at home, or stored someplace else and backed up, kind of like C-3PO's brain, that if it gets blown up, you can reestablish it. But if one of these companies goes out of business and you've built a long-term relationship with it, and they're trying to get you to, part of the hooks of this is that they want you to use whichever one you're more familiar with, because you like it because of style or whatever, but basically because you're going to feed information, and that memory document will be proprietary in most cases, even though other AIs could decode it for that model and how it works. So it is better as a consumer and as a user to have your own memory document that is updatable and that is easily, whatever AI model you're using, for it to reference, instead of you having to go, okay, this is who I am and this is what I do and this is my business and this is what my pets' names are and all this stuff every single time you load into one of these things in a context window. And right now, when you open a new chat, it doesn't forget everything, but it can only keep a certain number of contextual things in its mind at a time. It's like hiring the guy from Memento to be your employee every time you open a new chat. He's got some shit tattooed on his body, and he can read some notes, but the whole context of how it all happened and stuff is not available to him. Just the notes that he wrote down. So what this does is gives that guy a Bible of everything that you're working on, who you are, what you want to do, that he can pull off the shelf like any, and this applies to any of the models you're using, or, and as we'll get to in a moment, AI agents, which my biggest concern is that we're creating a bunch of wind-up toys that will just fucking create like siloed, like puppy parks in the middle of the internet that just gunk up everything. You'll have a dedicated denial of service caused by actual agentic workflow that people have forgotten they set on a task than on, like villains doing it.
And it's not denial of service. It's just it's gridlock.
Yeah,
it's like
exactly. It's accident. So AI bot gridlock is going to be a real thing, and I don't quite know how it's going to be remedied except by cul-de-sacking this shit and letting it wind itself into infinity. But I want to finish this thought for them, because the idea is that the purpose of this is just like your own personal notes or your journal that you would have about the projects and stuff you're working on, or those notes or whatever. Those should be available to the AI that you're trying to work with in a way that it doesn't own it, and they can't, if that company goes out of business, you're like, oh fuck, I had all my stuff in that model. That's at this point, things are moving so fast, and the trust factor I think that a lot of people have is that you don't want to hand over this stuff permanently or solely to one of these companies. So don't create your own document. Now, how do you update that? Well, you have a name for this markdown. Yeah, you use the AI itself, and you go, hey, at the end of this chat, when we're done and I've given you your project or I figured this part out, I want you to go through, and you can even set a task in most of these right now, whether it's through Cowork on Claude or one of these other ones, and go, hey, at the end of this conversation, update my markdown file with this thing, or recreate it. And if they can't actually write text into it, you can just go, take my markdown file that you read from, add what we've done, give me a new version of it, and then you just replace that file with the updated version. That's the kind of clunky way to do it, but it's very easy at this point and limits their control over it, so they can't overwrite it. You can check it against it. You could still store the old one. You could say version 3, version whatever, keep the old ones there, so that if they ever screwed up or created some sort of lie in there or hallucinated something, you could revert back to an earlier backup. And it's not a lot. We're talking about documents that are text files. They're not a ton of stuff, but they're very, so that's the value of it. And so keeping this kind of one of the things I think people got from OpenClaw, the agent AI stuff, was this idea of having a soul document and a personality document to reference or whatever. If you like your AIs to be honest with you and direct and have a very project-oriented thing, then think about it. Write it down. Type it up. Go, create that document. And then when you're working, go, all right, for the purposes of this project, reference personality 5, reference document 3. And that's all you need to do. You won't have to go, try to be nice to me. I'm very sensitive right now. Or this is all business. I want you to be an asshole assistant who's just always pushing me to get to my next appointment. Like, you can arrange those things and it will. Right. Yeah.
There's a couple things that maybe I can apply this to, that some people that are listening to us might have run into. Mm-hmm. And then I can explain to you why. So again, there's a limit to how much a answer can give you, because it's literally like a number of words. And so the memory, that file that we're talking about, or the memory that it keeps, it sends all those words with it. So if you've got 10,000 words and there's a $20,000 or 20,000 word limit, if your memory is 10,000 words and you send a 100-word prompt, then you're starting to get to the limit of what it can do, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you're better off chunking and only applying the little bit of memory that you want to go with it, because there's a limit to it. And to me, in the backwards version of it, that's why this idea of privacy and data collection in AI is a little bit of a misnomer, because AI can only take so much. So it can it literally
it's self-limiting.
It's self-limiting, exactly. Yeah. And it's always looking backwards. It's not looking forwards. So, and that's the key to humanity. Humanity is about the new. What am I going to do next?
Mhm.
And how am I going to use my knowledge to like inform what I do next? AI is incapable of doing that, right? Okay, so let's say you're in like a very long chat window. If anybody's used ChatGPT, I'm using that as my analogy or my explanation, because that's what I use. You'll get into this like very convoluted conversation where it was multiple topics and you've gone off on these tangents, and you have to like go off on the tangent, make a decision, and come back, go off on a tangent, make a decision, and come back. And you've got a very long chat window. What'll happen is that it'll slow down and your answers will take a lot longer to come back to you.
Mhm.
If you ever find that to be the case, you can speed it up by saying to it, please take our entire conversation and make me a single prompt that I can paste into another chat window so we can start from this point and move forward. And what it'll do is it'll essentially make this memory that we're talking about. It's going to
Yes.
summarize the conversation that you had into effectively the same thing as what a memory file is.
Yeah.
You copy that, you put it into the next chat window. And what you've done is you've taken this huge conversation you've had that's basically sucking away all the memory, and you've consolidated or summarized it into something small, and you start again.
Yeah.
And you can keep starting again and just continue going and going like that, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
So memory is effectively a summary of what you've talked about, which is very, very similar to the way humans remember. Like if you
Yeah.
have a spouse and you've lived together for a long time, my memories are brought up by certain things. Like she'll say something that reminds me of a time, and then that small summary is then what brings up the memory of the bigger chunk, right? It
Right.
could be smells, it could be something like that. But you don't remember things as all this data. You remember them as little summaries. And that's
Right.
the same way AI works.
Agreed. So one of the interesting things about the way you and I've been talking about the necessity of even doing that is part of the update cycle that a lot of these things are going through. And Claude,
Right.
one of the reasons why that people like Claude is that it does this on the regular once it realizes it's getting near a point where it's managing way too much chit chat and bullshit, and refines everything down to what you're really talking about. Goes, okay, I'm creating a document that catches this up like a bookmark. And
Yep.
as much as I would say it's like when a spouse reminds you of stuff, it's a lot more like business meeting notes, like the minutes of a meeting. And there's a reason why
Exactly.
human beings have done this over time, is that the last meeting was important. We can start off where we left off with the minutes of last time. We don't need to go into fucking what everybody ate and did and talked about in the chit chat about sports that happened in the middle of it, or any kind of random conversations that weren't valuable. We just need to deal with what action items and reality and changes and real opinions came from last time, and start up from there, because we only, as humans, we have a limited context window. This thing is very much like us. It is not better than humans. It can do more calculations in that window, but that window still exists. And as long as they use language as the functional point of this, that will always be true. And to some degree, this whole fear about, are we going to reach AGI or advanced super intelligence stuff? If we do, it won't be LLM based. It won't even be what I would call like an M cubed one, which is multimodal models, like where it takes in what it sees and what it hears and what's written, right? Which is the what a multimodal system is, and what robots would have to be. That's what most people are thinking of, or autonomous cars, shit like that. Has to see where it's going from all sides at all times. That's a lot of processing and computing power, and it's not stacking it day over day. So it's refining that information every time the car has gone out, and it learns from that, but it only takes the lessons necessary to it. Like if you're learning how to drive a car, it doesn't matter what fucking color the car that cut you off was. It's the speed it came in and whether or not you could find the brake fast enough. And that's where the same thing is true even of these LLMs and MMMs. So this idea that it's somehow like this giant philosophical genius that humans are going to be useless is just fucking dumb. and maybe it's just a panic from people who don't quite know what they're doing, and they're just blathering it out into the open, I think. Right.
Well, again, like we were talking at the beginning, I think it's just like when you apply the possibilities of
Come here,
it.
come here.
Proof of life.
Yes, for everybody, hold on.
Proof of life. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Summer.
Hi.
All right, I'll see you in a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, you're good to go? You're all right? Okay. Bye. Bye. She's got to go get
I mean-
hydration IV post chemos
Yeah.
yesterday. So, yeah. So they give they keep you hydrated. So that's where she going.
Well, I was just going to say, like, that's why both of us are so big on you have to use it, because as you use it,
Yep.
you will stop becoming a doomer.
Yes,
You will,
right.
because you will see its limitations. And,
Yeah.
and once you see its limitations, you're like, oh shit, how in the world, if it can't do this, how's it going to do that? You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Exactly. And if it
So-
can do this stuff, like, then it's like you know what it's like? Okay, I went to on my trip to China. I went to one of those temples where there are like 1,000 steps up the side of a mountain, right?
Yeah.
And I think most people look at AI like one of those 1,000-step staircases. And when you actually get, like, we're going to deliver this 1,000-step staircase to your house, and you're like, we're going to what? And then it shows up, and it's actually a step stool. It goes up about 3 steps, and if you go any higher, it starts to get teetery, and you might fall off. And so you're like, okay, this is tight enough. It's much more like that. It's more like the ladder you would use to change filters in your ceiling, you know, in your HVAC, than it is this, like, you know, Jacob's ladder that goes to the sky that's unfathomably long. And most people, like, if you showed somebody one, like, your stepping stool, and they were like, Jesus Christ, that's terrifying, you stand on that thing? You're like, okay, pal. Like, that's what I feel like when I listen to Tim Dillon and those guys. Like, it's a fucking step stool, stupid.
Yeah, yeah. So let me, like, I want to describe to you why I think it won't take jobs, because I'm going to tell you, like, I have currently, and I'm not going to like make any specifics because I can't just talk specifics, but I'm going to tell you how I work with one of my, the person I would consider my most capable AI client, who you would be surprised find is the least, it's like probably
I don't know why.
the least technical.
My phone rang and it took away my earphone for a split second. So I couldn't hear anything for a minute. Hold on.
I'm trying to say, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so I'm going to describe to you, I'm looping in the...
Yeah, I know. I'm working on that. Sorry. I'll turn on the echo cancellation. I can't do quite then. I'll turn it way down so I can barely hear you until this thing... basically, it has to wake back up. And I'll be able to hear you.
Okay, so...
Yeah, got it.
Okay, so we have a client who uses AI unlike any client I've ever seen, and I'm all for it, and I'll tell you how it's kind of going, and you'll understand like why I'm not worried about losing jobs.
Right.
Because so you talked about a meeting. So if we do work for someone, we have to, like, effectively, as I sort of talked about before, we have to do this work, but it doesn't mean anything unless the client understands what we did, and then they find value in that, right?
Yes.
Like that's literally what a consultant does, is they try to basically create value out of whatever it is they're delivering, right? So it used to be, or even in a normal project, like you're essentially getting a group of people to go the same direction. So if you have a meeting, you would start off the meeting by making meeting notes or meeting minutes or an itinerary, whatever you call it, agenda. And then you would get into the meeting, and all together you would go through that agenda. And then at the end, everybody would leave, and one person who was the note taker or something like that, they would then create a summary, like you said.
Yeah.
And then the summary would go out. So here you are with, they call them artifacts in a lot of these
Yes.
AI videos I watch. They call
Yeah.
these things artifacts, right?
Right.
So the artifact would be the agenda. That's some document. Then the meeting doesn't exist because it was, unless somebody took a video of it. So maybe there's a video or of audio of the meeting. And then there's the presentation at the end, which is the outcome of that. And those 2 or 3 documents they like, who the fuck goes and looks at those again?
Right.
They're like, and my argument is in the new, and I'm about to explain why, in the new AI, the job that went away is person who the person who was like in charge had another person make those documents because they felt they had to make the documents, because if those 2 or 3 documents weren't on SharePoint in the company, then they never did anything, right?
Right. Yeah.
But like, if nobody's ever going to read it, all these people are going to go away, and each of those people, they're going to have like different ideas of what happened in that meeting. It's kind of like 5 people watch a bank robbery, and they're all going to tell you a different version of what happened at the bank robbery, right?
Right.
Okay, so now let's get to, here's how I run a meeting with this client.
Okay.
I don't do an agenda at all. We only use Zoom now because Zoom has this amazing, it records it and it gives you a summary and a transcript.
Mm-hmm.
So we just get on, we talk, and we have a review, and then I only send the transcript to this client, and this guy takes that thing and puts it into his ChatGPT chat that he's been running the entire project, and he spends hours conversing with the transcript of our meeting.
Right.
Okay, like, wrap your head around that for a minute.
Yeah.
So essentially, the purpose of the meeting, from a standpoint of me as my job, is to create a prompt that will help him understand what in the world is going on in this project. And I know if he got it, because he always sends me like a 100% AI generated response at the end.
Yeah.
That's what his understanding of that meeting was. And if I read his understanding of that meeting and it lines up with what I meant to tell him, then it was a success.
Right. Right.
Okay?
Sure.
I didn't do the agenda. I didn't summarize it. Nothing. All I did is I spoke on camera and I sent him a transcript.
Right.
And he did the rest of the work, but he did it in a way that was personal to him.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Okay. That's a completely backwards way of working if you compare it to what a normal meeting might happen in a corporation.
Yeah. Standard corporate structure. Right.
Yeah. So
Iteration.
the value of our work together is literally like the physical thing we're creating and I'll call it the memory file of our transcripts and our chats and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a deliverable. It's instead the thing that you can parse with, or you can like attack with questions for the AI.
Right.
And at some point in time, when he goes back and he looks for ways to explain what we did, marketing jargon, things like that, he doesn't need me anymore to do that. He can just look at our transcripts, essentially.
Right.
And I think it's literally, it feels, as a person working in it, like we are a different level of value to that. And I can charge for effectively what my company and my own like entry into his memory is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sounds crazy the way you say it. It sounds like you're trying to summon a Sumerian demon. But I will say what I mean is, I think it means that you're dealing in the quality of your interaction versus the material and the quantity of the words said to explain it. You know, it's like you're not giving directives or solving a problem based on the number of words or the multisyllabic words that you use, but by the value of that interaction and the originality and the capability, and the rest of it is outsourced. Which, by the way, is how robber barons and big rich companies made all their money for a long time. They could afford staffs to do all this shit and get way ahead of everybody else. It wasn't that, that other companies wouldn't like to have note takers and secretaries and all this kind of stuff, and wouldn't have been, their ideas weren't weaker because they didn't. It's just they didn't have the capital, the resources, the availability, the employee base. If they didn't live in a populated enough area, you just didn't have access to this, right? And that, let me bring you to this bit right here. So the big fear about job loss and we've seen this
Okay.
back and forth, right? Yeah, this part of what this thing is that Tim Dillon was bringing up was that, they're apparently gleefully firing people, and we're never going to have any people, and blah blah blah. And this is an article, I think we talked about this one last year from Axios about where this was going. And it was like, artificial intelligence is not taking your job just yet, according to MIT's State of AI Business 2025 report. Instead, AI is predominantly replacing outsourced and offshore workers. And there is another aspect of this that I don't know why they miss, which is outsourced and offshore workers, and those that from companies that never had a chance to even outsource and offshore workers. The companies that never had the material resource to be able to hire a factory in China to make their own shit or design something for them or whatever, they're able to at least get to the iteration point in a way that only big companies could do because they have digital employees. And we'll talk about that in a second. Amazon has just have created OpenClaw servers on their website, just like Hostinger and other sites have now, like this turnkey idea. But there don't seem to be any layoffs specifically, and this is around that even 4,000. The Dorsey's kicking people to the curb because of allegedly AI seems to have as much to do with a low stock price because of profitability and his investment in crypto that Cash App and his other shit, fucking like it's not strange at all that he cut half of his employees when Bitcoin got cut in half. It went from 170,000 to 68,000, and suddenly you're cutting half your employees. That seems like more of a bellwether than I can foresee the future and I'm probably just going to be able to AI this shit. And it sounds like a desperate move to force people to AI this shit, if anything. So I don't think it was.
I think it's a sign that his company is failing. I think that's what it is. Like,
yeah,
it's that simple. And he's blaming AI for what he would have called layoffs before.
That's right.
So that when his stock, when people are looking at his stock, they're not like, oh, this company's failing. Instead, they think, oh, this company is becoming more efficient or something like that. Right.
So the U.S. economy, remember how Trump was like, they were touting this whole, like we had 50,000 in January and then 150,000 in February. So Trump's stuff is finally working, baby. Remember that? Like his, like last month. Well, actually.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, actually they had to like revise the number just like Biden had to go through, just like everybody else. The labor market surprisingly shed 92,000 jobs in February, while the unemployment rate was 4.4%. Government said Friday, which is still very strange, whatever, but that's within the factor of the volume of people. It was the worst month for payrolls since October, signaling that the labor market is on weaker footing than previously believed. Now, this is partly what they need to lower interest rates, so it's a weird thing, that internally I'm sure the White House is hoping for the job market to weaken because that's the only way you get to interest rates without some sort of active measure like a war to upend the economic aspect of things and hide your failures as far as inflation in that shit. If you go, well, we got a war in the Middle East, that's going to drive up fuel prices. Fuel prices rise everything costs. So I was doing great fixing inflation with my phony numbers, but now, stuff's gonna be more expensive because I had to do a little detour. He said, "Is that okay with you, Jameson, or whatever?" That's what he said yesterday. This is beyond covering for the Epstein files. It's a great way to cover that your economic model sucks too, because you can hide it behind this.
So, I mean, the way in general politically Trump is a say everything, so that when the future happens, whatever happens, he can tell you. He has an excuse. He has like a reason. Like, so, yeah, I mean, if it plays out in that way, he'll say, oh, well, of course there's inflation because the war.
Yeah. Right.
But I had to do the war, so sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, tough shit. So just for the record, economists expected roughly 50,000 jobs to be added last month. Bureau of Labor Statistics said job growth over the last 2 months was weaker than initially estimated, including a sharp revision in December. December was revised down from a gain of 48,000 jobs to a loss of 17,000 jobs. We were in negative territory in December. And again, like, that's seasonally adjusted, I suppose, to some degree, but that's when people hire you just for Christmas, right? Gains in January were revised down by 4,000 to 126,000. That was the big number that they were like, oh man. Initially, they were saying 150 because he makes up a number on that. But we ended up, they expected 50,000 last month, and it shed 92,000. We're negative, about 40. And this is rough. So a lot of people, Kevin Warsh, who Trump wants to put into the Fed, is going to be, they want to factor this part of it in. Shoppers pulled back in 2026. Commerce Department said that retail sales dipped slightly below negative 0.2% in January, while sales were flat the previous month. That's because people who can't afford it are buying stuff and they're paying the extra because they need the stuff. And then other people are just not buying it all. And it's big ticket items are outweighing. That's why there's upper middle class and rich people are booing the economy and sales because of FOMO and tech stuff and buying Mac Minis to build AI walls and stuff like that. Okay. The other thing is, let me jump to this. Okay. So Anthropic is having this big dust up with the Department of War, right? We've seen this over the last little bit. And what is the basis of this? Well, it's that they won't let their model be used for unfettered military purposes. Like, they're putting limitations, governors, on what it's allowed to do and in what it's allowed to participate in. Now, the problem I have with this is that Elon Musk would gladly step in with Grok, and he did. We saw this. And so instead of having a model that's designed with an ethical root to it, like Anthropic's, making even the most difficult decisions, you'll have a version of Grok that has none of those restraints. If anything, it defaults towards a more bigoted view of the world. And that's the issue with and so OpenAI jumped in to pick up the slack, and they got blowback from their customers for the same reason. My problem is that both of those companies definitely have a better ethical root in their design and creation of their AI models than Grok does. And if they're not available, that's where Trump's going. Even if he has his issues with Elon Musk, he's going to scoop up, Grok's, like the Perplexity guys aren't going to give it to him. So it's going to be Grok running things. And if you want a Terminator Skynet situation that hates fucking humans and thinks they're all awful, Grok's your pal.
Yeah, I mean, I have kind of like a bunch of weird takes on this.
Great.
So first, I kind of feel like the DoD doesn't run its own AI. So they're always going to be, no matter who's in charge, they're always going to be at the whim of the company that they're working for. Just like in Russia, they convinced Musk to turn off Starlink, and Russia is screwed in terms of communicating with its drones in that sense, right? So this is the same thing. No matter who the company is, it's still not their own thing. And so OpenAI can turn around tomorrow and say, you can't do this, or Grok can do that, or Anthropic. So that's one kind of just side note to that. The second is Anthropic was, all they were asking were to keep humans in the loop.
Yeah.
For a couple of things. And you sort of alluded to it, but I think that the Trump administration, or Hegseth, or whatever personality you want to attach to it, they just want to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
And I think that by essentially putting the hammer down on a defense contractor, which Anthropic is, they've long been a defense contractor, and we're using Anthropic now. I think that they just wanted to be able to swing their dicks and say that, we can shut you off anytime we want. And to me, there's like a lot of grifting probably happening, or side deals or whatever that they're at least looking for, which Elon Musk is totally happy to do that with
Totally.
Grok, as you said.
Yep.
So, like, it's just completely like devoid of rules. and I think that probably the only way to fix the fact that it's happening at all, it seems like this is bound to happen, no matter who the vendor is for the DoD to use its own AI.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother level of crazy.
Yeah. Right. It would be difficult to do because of civilian oversight, because you would argue that there would actually have to be an AI that is run by and responsible to oversight committees and the president himself and the civilian leadership because of the nature of our function. So you couldn't just have this kind of AI targeting system that only takes its cues from generals and the like. It would have to come from the civilian leadership. This is Trump's response, by the way, to the Anthropic thing, just so you can see the scale of Tim Dillon level dumb we're talking about here. The United States of America will never allow a radical left woke company to dictate how our great military fights and wins wars, all caps. That decision belongs to your commander-in-chief, in all caps, and the tremendous leaders I appoint to run our military. The left-wing nut jobs at Anthropic have made a disastrous mistake by trying to strong-arm the Department of War and force them to obey their terms of service instead of our Constitution. Their selfishness is putting American lives at risk, our troops in danger, and our national security in jeopardy. This is, by the way, written by someone else, not Trump. He dictated parts of it and they cleaned it up for him. Therefore, I'm directing every federal agency in the United States government to immediately cease, and this is in all caps, and this is why this is important, immediately cease all use of Anthropic's technology. We don't need it, we don't want it, and will not do business with them again. There will be a 6-month phase-out period for agencies like the Department of War. That's my favorite flip in this whole thing, who are using Anthropic's products at various levels. And Anthropic better get their act together and be helpful during this phase-out period, or I will use the full power of the presidency to make them comply. I don't know what the fuck that means, like stop using it to move to others or whatever. It's so odd. With major civil and criminal consequences to follow. We will decide the fate of our country, not some out-of-control radical left AI company run by people who have no idea what the real world is about. World is capitalized for no reason other than the world is important, I guess. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make America great again, President Donald J. Trump. It's amazingly stupid, and it's unfortunately it's where we are in these kind of stacks of stupidity. Now, I do want to address what I think is a more realistic view. So this one, let me see if I can find this. Is this the paper? Blah, 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 blah. No, this one, where is it? I've got so many things been reading. So to get
while you're looking, so I would say like it's basically impossible to just shut it off. You're not just going to shut it off.
Yeah,
because it's embedded in it's literally embedded in the things that it's currently embedded in.
Right.
And you would have to completely stop using systems to that have it in there. You can't just like say, oh, we're gonna take Anthropic out of the missile or out of the computer that's doing. I mean, and by the way, there's this like we used AI to go into Venezuela. Like, what the fuck does that even mean? What did they use it for? Like, what actual things did they use it for? And nobody's gonna say that. And I would argue that I'll bet you if you figured out, if you like learned the specifics of what they used, you would be thoroughly unimpressed.
Yeah.
I'm positive of that.
I agree.
It's probably more akin to they were able to like send a lot of bots to like do denial of service attacks or something because they use AI to like automate that. It's probably more like that than it is anything else.
So one of the, in all the doom and gloom, there are those that kind of are moderating their tone about these kind of things. And Moody's, famously as the credit bureau and all this stuff, has released this giant report, which I've had the misfortune of perusing for quite some time. But I mean, there are worse things. It's not that it's bad. It's just dense, economic talk about this kind of stuff. But the primary thing is that they agree it's one of the most consequential technologies of a generation, if not the history of humankind, with enormous implications for the economy. However, the specifics of how it will shape the future remain highly uncertain and are subject to immense debate. Many technologists deeply involved in AI's development believe it will massively increase productivity, resulting in significant net job losses and much higher unemployment. Conversely, most economists who look to the economic history of the past general purpose technologies tend to be more circumspect, expecting AI to lift productivity but also to diffuse slowly enough through the economy that the job market adjusts more gracefully. There may be bouts of higher unemployment, but any increase will be modest, as jobs lost to AI will be largely offset by new jobs supported by the income and wealth it creates. How this ultimately unfolds is all but impossible to fathom. Therefore, in this study, we consider several scenarios that put some bounds around the possibilities that economists are contemplating. So instead of writing a final report on what they think will happen, they're like, here's probably 5 scenarios that'll happen. And when I was reading this, one of their more doomer angles on it, I couldn't help but think of the movie Gung Ho with Michael Keaton, right?
Yeah.
And it's really about like the replacement of factory workers by Japanese workers, even though Gung Ho is a Chinese phrase, which always bothered me even back then. That the Japanese are going to move in, then they're going to move the factory overseas, and nobody wants to work together, and it's a different way of living, and it's like they did this fish out of water thing, but the reality was that they were going to just pack the fucking factory up and move it back to Japan. And that ironically, I think it was the tariff stuff of Reagan was what made them have to build some Toyota plants here in the United States or risk pissing off America, and so that's what they ultimately did, and that's how Gung Ho happened. Like half the workforce is going to be Japanese, and the other half of the workforce is going to be American. And whether they can get along or if everybody's just too fucking racist. And anyway, so I kept thinking about that kind of breakdown of like how people viewed that shift in automation and efficiency. Not even robots doing the jobs, but more efficient human beings with less personality, less interest in a private life or whatever, allegedly, that was what the Japanese were thought of as, is this kind of like quiet, obedient, subservient race of people who are going to come in and take everybody's job, and they really don't do picnics and baseball games and shit like that. They don't want to have a life and have to be taught to have one. When in reality, it's much closer to that they were, if you're going to move these jobs over here, they recognize each other's humanity. And the idea was that ultimately it was just a farce because they were going to move them over there where they're cheaper. And it was ultimately China that was going to swallow up the cheaper, more difficult, more painful, more body consuming jobs.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they were analogized. The people were analogized as the robots.
Yes,
like
that's right.
Either we have a choice. We either have the robots here and no jobs, or we give it to the robots there, which are the people with no jobs. Yeah. So I mean, it's always the same basic thing, which is somebody like we're not going to have the means of creating income that we need to survive because somebody higher than us is, exchanging us for something else,
something cheaper, to sell stuff to people who don't have any money or anything. That's why,
right, which is where it breaks down.
Right, and it's where like the Musk and the Peter Diamandis or whatever crowd or whatever. I think that's where they've hit the sort of glitch in their expectations, which is, if you eliminate all jobs and all labor, then what do people do for a living to buy the stuff you're making with that labor? And at a certain point, the only real answer is anything that's not optional in life: clean water, food, housing, maybe. The robots make that effectively for free, depending on the resources available. Maybe you have to give some, a free robot to the person who you're getting trees off their land for wood or some shit like that, is the only way they're being exchanged beyond that. And that everything after that, there is no consumer base to build anything but the necessities. And so that's why UBI or one of those things comes in. So people have effectively monopoly money to play with. So you get a certain amount every month, your needs are met, but what are you going to spend your choose money on? And so there will be a value and hierarchy economy built on top of that, and so that other people can use that pleasure money that they get, that play money, to make other purchasing choices of their own that drive people to do stuff that's very personal. And so, there's always going to be that kind of secondary economy created out of UBI or whatever, because the boil down of like, okay, here's Soylent Green, here's the robot street sweepers, we've got chipper shredders instead of funerals and all that stuff. Like, that's not the way this goes. It just doesn't. Humanity doesn't put up with it, won't put up with it, will just disengage and run off into the fucking woods. And they know this. But one of the things they say is that job market upheaval, which is the big one that everybody's worried about, they put at a 20% probability. AI adoption accelerates, leading to much larger productivity gains more quickly. This already fragile job market is hit hard as job losses from the productivity gains occur so quickly that any job creation in the rest of the economy falls short, resulting in significant overall job losses, high unemployment, and a recession. Although AI companies are highly profitable and their shareholders enjoy greater stock wealth, the economic benefits are highly concentrated, exacerbating the downturn. Lower middle income Americans who do not own much, if any, stock do not benefit, and therefore forced to cut back on spending amid the reeling job market and income losses. So that's the big fear of the windup that's coming in the next little bit. And the question is, will it be temporary or permanent? Will those people be moved into some sort of a fiefdom, or will it just be it'll take us a little bit to see how this shakes out because the changes will be so extraordinary.
Yeah. So like, I don't even care about these things in terms of trying to read people's, like you said that they had 4 different possibilities. Was that only one of the possibilities that you described?
Yes. Here's I'll show you. They measure investment in GDP and its wealth effect. Then they can try to calculate AI adoption rate is strong, but within historical bounds. So the same people are doing the same shit on the same level that other technology has been adopted, and there's no like rush to do it amongst regular people. So therefore, there's also a slow movement in business because there's a trickle aspect of corporate behavior that everybody wants to be on the cutting edge, but also behind any mistake curve. So there's this sweet spot that everybody gets stuck in, and then there's this economist versus AI technologist kind of prediction aspect of thing where AI falls flat, that effectively the job gains and the job losses are balanced out, that effectively it's just part of our normal arc upward towards productivity long term, that even with like it gets jagged, it basically is just, if you squint and you move far enough away, the stock market, you can't even see 2008. That's what they're basically saying about the, this over a longer period of time. Whether there's a bubble, circular financing, which is what everybody talks about. This whole like, which is happening. But I also think it's kind of dumb in that chips are a real thing. Models, cloud platforms, and data centers and chip makers are real. They make stuff, whereas it's not like a software loop the way they talk about it. Like it just makes itself smarter, and then it gets smarter from this being smarter, and then like it's.
Yeah, but what can be made unreal is who gets the future stock.
Yeah,
who gets the output in the future, and that's what everyone's fighting for. Mm-hmm. And that's why the circular thing is more about fake deals than it is about, because like they come up with a deal which is obviously circular, but it's not real if the money never moves in the circle, right? So like. You have to, they're all promises. So in terms of these, first of all, in terms of the ones you just said, like as a like a super user of these things, I think it's probably the most likely that it falls flat, honestly, because I still don't see, I see great productivity gains in the way, in our company, the way we use it, but we're like using it in a very specific way. That's, I would call somewhat proprietary to our work. Yeah. Maybe the better way to say it is personal. Like it's not something we're keeping from somebody, but I see it as a very personalized thing where the way I use it is not the way you use it, but we're sort of kind of each using it for the same purpose in our own ways. So the reason I say that is because like I'm not sure that there's this like massive new way of working on the horizon that we haven't figured out yet. Because if there was, we would be seeing the starts of that, and I'm not seeing it. The only thing I'm seeing is like we can write software real fast.
Right. Well, and I
Which,
would
you
argue
know,
that the
forces
one
the
difference
software
is that
developers.
the arc of growth in robots over the last year has been largely driven by the fact that you can write software faster and iterate it and test it so much
Yeah.
faster with this. And that is what it's done is the natural arc we were on, it's just shortened the time frame for a lot of these things. And that's where it gets disruptive. It's that robots were always going to replace everything we ever did, but some people thought it'd be 50 years and some people thought it would be 1,000, right? And what it's
Yeah.
done is it's squashed it down so we have to react in a shorter time frame, and it causes upheaval in that regard, which is, by the way, the invention arc of everything. Every major invention has done this.
I would argue that the current state is all, what do you call the Chinese word, fart air?
Feng Pi.
Our fun beat. So it's all just, we're all just writing our own future stories.
Yeah.
And what I think like robots are, that's where the choice will have to be made. So
Yes.
making a deal right now it's like you're not putting any skin in the game. All you're doing
Yeah.
is saying you might do something in the future.
Mhm.
When the robot becomes available, you then have to choose whether you're going to buy the robot or not.
Mhm.
And so that's when you know. And once that choice happens, once that choice is available, I would argue that you'll probably get a lot of people that will choose not to buy it, which is as powerful as the people who choose to buy it.
Right.
And then that's
Or
when
can't
you'll start
afford
to
it
see,
at that iteration wave and wait till
Well,
early adopter versus yeah.
I'm coming at it from a slightly different way. We talked
Okay.
a couple weeks ago about a restaurant with a robot
Yes.
or a human server. That's the sort of choice I'm talking about.
Agreed.
And so if you choose as McDonald's or like I'm thinking maybe more like a Applebee's, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's an actual sit down restaurant chain versus a local restaurant.
Mhm.
That, okay, so if Applebee's decides it's going to buy a bunch of robots to become more efficient and people stop going to Applebee's,
Mhm.
then Chili's is going to be like, oh shit, we better not buy robots.
Yeah.
If I'm getting that, like somebody's going to have to figure out how to make a robot work, how to make a robot dining experience something that somebody wants to go to before robots take over service jobs is maybe the right way to say it. And I know those are like lower paying jobs, but you can apply that same logic to other things as well,
Right.
because almost all situations are human interactions.
Mhm.
So there's that. Yeah, Denny's robotic server. So my point is like we can speculate all day long. When the speculation will stop once figure 3 has readily available,
Right.
or figure 1, sorry.
No, figure
is it
3.
figure-
It's
Figure
figure,
three, sorry.
but the third is the iteration. Right.
Okay, so once they have a thing that I can go and buy right now, once that happens, that's when shit gets real.
Yeah.
And then we'll start seeing what's the actual outcome of this. But for right now, I don't believe anything. If I see job losses, I don't blame it on AI. I blame
Right.
it on us. I blame it
Yeah.
on companies not selling their products well enough, or having some other problems with whatever, the economy or
Well, it's also a
funding.
good way to look smart when you've done something stupid in the case of Jack
Exactly.
Dorsey, right?
Exactly.
I'm ahead of the curve. I'm not responding to a personal and intellectual failure in getting involved in fucking crypto like a dipshit, right? So,
Yeah. So I don't know that I really believe that like once that shit gets real, is as I say it, I think that the outcomes they're going to be surprising, and not surprising in, all jobs are gone. I think it's going to be surprising in the sense of like, no, I really want a person to be there when I go to do this. Like
Right.
I've had to go and do a lot of like purchasing of things that I don't know much about recently for a project that we've been working on. And I've been shocked at the fact that there are literally like no choices for retail on those physical items anymore.
Mhm.
And I literally couldn't find them. I was like trying to go places to actually see them. And a lot of these retail stores that I went to, they were like out of inventory on a lot of stuff. I don't know if you're seeing that same thing.
Yes.
Um, and and so like the Amazonification of retail shopping is a similar arc as to when robots start to happen in terms of human interaction, I think.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that's sort of my take on those concepts.
Yeah, and I, you know how I feel about robot stuff is that I'm more bullish on that than I am on chatbots,
Yeah,
and partly because it will have more real world consequences. Not that the LLMs don't, but there's a material difference when you start moving shit around. In the
Yep.
same way, sort of waiting for people to get shit or get off the pot about AC or DC current, so we can all move on to get to the point of why, and a
Exactly.
lot, right? And the why part of it is already in existence. Beyond, wouldn't it be cool to have your own C-3PO, which is the dumbest fucking Elon Musk dreck reasoning behind this, but because rich people have assistants and butlers and people who can physically help them move a piece of furniture and who know what kind of breakfast they like and all that kind of stuff. And most people never experience that in their existence on this planet. And the idea that you could afford that or have a version of that, so you could get on with why, would be valuable, right? Which is the value of those things, because it's about the living. And most of us, this idea like, what do we do with people if they don't have a job because they'll lose their identity in what they're doing as their job? If you're an inventor or something like that, then your true identity does come from your job. But if you just call very few people, given a choice, if they could retire early because they won the lottery and spend the rest of their days seeing the world and traveling and meeting people and trying their foods and sleeping with their people, wouldn't jump at it. And it's, no matter what Trump says about I could put these coal miners in a fucking, high rise in New York and they'd rather be, a mile below the earth in coal dust because that's just who they are, is such a fucking chimpy way of looking at the goddamn world. And the reality is, we do a lot of the stuff that we do to feed ourselves and put, give opportunities to our children for education and that kind of stuff. And then the question becomes, how much of it would you do for free? And the goal has always been follow your passion. Only do it if you would do it for free for a lot of people. Well, that's a very narrow scope of work for a lot of people. Everybody else is just like that. Yeah, there's no chance that's going to exist. So this is their opportunity to have a little bit of that experience through AI and chatbots and the efficiency of that work, and robots doing some of the physical labor. That will be their first taste of it in history, much less in their own lives.
Yeah, the C-3PO is a funny example because C-3PO is fucking useless. All he did was translate, that was his value. But every other time, if he wasn't translating, he was just holding them up or in the way or doing stupid shit, getting them in trouble, right?
Well, he was a personal calculator, so he could translate based on what you wanted him to know or what other people wanted to know. You never really saw much. And the funny thing is he's the translator, but it was always R2-D2 who stuck a fucking key in there and was talking to the computer on the Death Star. I'm like, C-3PO he was like R2-D2's emotional support animal.
Yeah. You could basically get the function of C-3PO on your phone right now. And I guess maybe R2-D2 as well. What you really need is you need them carrying stuff for you.
Well, and R2-D2 was a smart navigator that could comprehend galaxies. So if you were jumping the light speed and that kind of stuff, he was basically, that's why he was such a thick body thing. Yeah, he was part of what calculated. He could do it faster than the Millennium Falcon could, and he could certainly do it for Luke in the ship. That's why you'd put one of the R2 units in there, but you could take them out because they could do other shit later.
R2. Okay, I was getting them confused.
Yeah,
R2. Yeah, R2 is doing all of the interface to the computer basically.
Yeah,
he was the brain.
Yeah,
for the
and they use 3PO like Alexa, which is what Ichigo fan
Yeah,
says.
that's
Ichigo fan says.
3PO is the one I'm talking about. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
3PO is like
like
the odds
just a
surviving
ass.
this is 10,046 to 1, that kind of thing. Uh,
All right. So I don't do. Are there any missing questions that we've missed?
I don't know.
Sorry.
Okay, hold on.
We can run through those real quick and then.
Yeah, and by the way, one vision, I don't know quite what the argument you're talking about here is. You idiots don't know 4K a month to live, drugs alone. Now buy rent and food. I'm fucking powder keg. Like I don't. That's not part of the conversation that we're actually having here in terms of costs and the like. But the idea is that this would drive those costs down over time in a way that you can't separate rich and poor as easily as you used to. That once you drive labor costs and startup costs to a minimum, then a charity like Habitat for Humanity, with the money that they were donated just to get people to start projects, they could actually build 3D printed homes in the near future on that same amount of money with the same organizational money. Like instead of paying a bunch of people to run a charity and convince other people to try and expand available homes or whatever, they could actually build it cheaper than all the money that they raised just trying to convince people to build more housing. And that's where this is heading. That's where I think it helps in terms of driving costs down. That's where I was bringing up that deflationary aspect of things. And then Roxanne says, why does no one consider that ladies might want a robot companion? See my bit about that. I've already considered it quite thoroughly. Somebody said someone should make little AI R2D2 robots for Christmas. Well, one of the things that I've been doing with the AI that I've been working on that's on one of the Jetson Nanos is putting it in this little toy R2 I've had for years. The one that you used to be able to say, hey, R2, and it would dance and that kind of stuff, or play a game and, hide and seek, shit like that. That still exists on that chip, and I'm trying to find a way to like download the firmware off that and then feed it into another thing and give it a large language model and a multimodal model to like absorb more information so that its little camera in it is actually effective and can scan and know me and know people and that kind of stuff. And so I've been toying with that. I just haven't cracked it open yet because I don't want to destroy it without an end game in place. Let's see. Yeah, ladies already integrated sex bots ages ago. I agree. They just like severed units as opposed to full companions. Women, yeah. All right. Proving Einstein was wrong doesn't erase his whatever. There's always holes in scientific theory. Agreed. I mean, especially when there's a factor of like socio and economic factors. That's why there's no real science around it, because it can shift on a dime based on the attitude of a group of people. And you can try and shift that attitude, but you might actually shift it in the opposite direction. Propaganda can cause, as these days, as much of a rejection of the very idea you're trying to push as the idea you're trying to push. Yeah. Yeah, One Vision says would be helpful. That's what I'm saying. Like this moves it down to, if you're worried about BlackRock buying up a bunch of houses and making people and keeping them poor, this is one of the things that democratizes that situation. When following the Rob Glenn 99% rule, once you get construction robots, once you get to that point, the technology will continue to improve for the high end user beyond that point, and a second and third hand construction robot will be on eBay.
Right.
And so buying a dozen of those and going, I'm going to build a fucking log cabin and these things are going to help me do it. And when they're done, I'm going to give them other tasks to do, even if it's just to be my friends like JF Sebastian and Blade Runner. So, you look at like an old flip phone or something like that, or an old laptop. You can technically still use it for a lot of shit. You could be very productive with your own Excel documents and that kind of stuff on an old laptop, as long as you don't need new internet, video connectivity. It's still a very functional thing, and you can find them for free, right? You can use these things at libraries because of that access, because they became so cheap and ubiquitous.
I sent Hal a article a couple days ago that I read that was talking
Yes.
about a 7 billion token model,
Right.
and that basically is something that most people could run on a computer. That
Locally.
many
Yep.
computers could run that locally, and it was kind of talking about how an experience that I've had with my own, because this thing that I kind of sort of described, and I'll try to figure out a way to show it on screen. It's got all of my personal and work stuff in it, which is what makes it
Yeah, that's the tough
powerful.
part, right?
And also, I can't show it, so
You should ask it
at
to
least
make a
publicly.
demo version based on
I
another file so
should.
you could show it. It'll do it.
That's actually really interesting. I could actually, because it's built from the data, so I could actually have it make fake data.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. I'll try to do that.
Try to
Anyway,
make a, here's
what
a
was
good
I
idea.
saying?
Try to make a
Oh,
version of that for me to use and
that
say, give it
I I was
demo.
gonna like
Yeah.
no, I was gonna load you up with it, but I need access to your server,
Yes,
and
we'll get
all
to
I have to
that.
do is just literally drag it in there, and it'll work.
Right.
Um, so what I was trying to say was that the most value, the thing that's given us the most productivity increase, is capable of being driven by a local AI.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's what's interesting about that is, and that's one of the reasons why I don't think that that I think the end will be flat, as you said,
Yeah.
because I think that once the reality of using it in real life situations gets out and is happening, I think people will realize productivity gains without the massive models. And
Right.
I know, and I believe that because that's my experience with it as we
Yeah.
use it. And I'm reading other people that are seeming to say the same thing, that in fact the more they add, sometimes the worse it gets, which is an
Right.
interesting way to think about it. So
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know
you
if
can
that
hire
helps.
somebody who's too overqualified for a job. They will start, in their busy mind nitpicking the system and trying to re-answer questions you've already dealt with, or fixate on something and get distracted or
Yeah.
bored in the workplace and not do their own work. That's been experienced with humans for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how many of these things actually parallel real human interactions, which
Yep.
is it's not surprising to me because it's trained off of our language, it's trained off of our stories. So in theory, it should work just like us.
Yeah.
And
Well, and behave just
as you
like us
always
and have the
say, like,
limitations that we have because of that.
yeah, yeah,
Within
exactly.
calculator levels.
Yeah. So I sometimes think that the people that are going to be the best at using AI are the people that are the best at communicating with other human beings. And like actually very good, like really good
Right.
managers
Mm-hmm.
in like really good, talented managers are quite good at like motivation of different
Mm-hmm.
types of people and like explaining things in clear, precise ways, and like laying out proper like goals and getting to those goals. So those are the kind of soft skills that I think we're sort of not really we're thinking like, oh, this AI is just going to go do this thing, and it kind of can't unless it's somehow empowered by these soft skills that I'm kind of talking about. So,
Right.
and anyway, I think in general, like our message has always been, get out, use it just as a chat bot for now. I've seen many people mention like things that they've done with it. I saw somebody mention that they got an old iPhone working as a timer, like, oh, Carl Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's who. So like use it for little things like that, and as you do it, you'll start to feel better about it because you'll see
Right.
what it really is and how it works and its limitations and its benefits and all those things. So get out there and use it.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll talk more about the sort of the practical uses of it next time. But I think we can say without reservation that it is not Sam Altman and a bunch of people in a cult trying to raise a Sumerian god that they've always been trying to create, and they just decided to go into coding because it's the best way to bring this devil forward is in technology and in some sort of a neo Amish Luddite snap reflex to
Right.
new technology. Thanks so much, Rob. I appreciate it greatly. And let's, over the next little bit, I'm home for the foreseeable future. Let's have a little meeting, and I'll try and set that system up, and then I can show it before I front load it with all my stuff.
Yeah, perfect.
That'd be a good idea.
I talk tech all the time, but I just got my first iPhone, so I can actually FaceTime with you now.
Look at that. Aw.
like Hal always says, "Let's FaceTime," and I'm like, I can't. I don't have an iPhone.
Dun, dun, dun. All right.
It's great to see everybody in the chat, and have a great weekend, and love you, Hal.
Yeah, you too. And I'll talk to you soon. All right, we'll catch up.
Yep.
All right, cheers. Bye. So there goes Rob Glenn. I gotta say, play around with some of these things. If you're, again, what I would suggest is start making journaling's a good idea anyways. If you're gonna use AI and stuff like that, and you've been using it for a while, go, hey, give me a document with everything you know about me and the kind of like that I could give to another AI to catch up where you are. And it will give you one of those. Check it and then save it for yourself. And then reference it in other models to see if one works better than the other, or a local one which costs you nothing except the power to keep your computer on. So I appreciate you guys. I just don't want you panicking about this shit. I want you adapting just like every other technology. This is not going to be the end of humanity any more than automatic transmissions in cars got rid of vehicles. We're still going places. So that's not going to change anytime soon. Take care of yourselves and take care of somebody else. How do you get money, please? Well, the issue is that money will matter less, Billy Joe. That's where this is going. We're going to raid Boston Brian. Excellent. Is he ready to go, or is he like 10 minutes away? Let me check that, because I don't like, is he all set up? Because I think he starts at the half hour, right? Or is he up? He's ready? Excellent. Okay, I'll let you guys go. Wonderful. See you this afternoon for House Sparks Mega Worldwide. All right. Or they say social talk of utopia. Yeah, they kind of are. Except without forcing labor on other people, which is what socialism and communism require. You put it on technology, which I think is better. Yes? And less like slavery.
Maximum overdrive.